Welcome to Tiny Kitchen, folks. We're pretty sure this is the smallest space to ever be featured on a cooking show. If we can cook it here, you can cook it anywhere. Did you catch this week's recipe riddle? In some countries, I'm a prized fighter. In some countries, they chew on my feet. And south of Lone Star, they call me loco. What am I? I'm chicken, known in Mexico as pollo. Today, we're going to cook Pollo Asado de Baja, a wonderful south of the border, spicy, fresh recipe I think you're really going to love. The ingredients are again very simple. We have chicken breast that we've quartered here. We have onions that are just chopped into eighths and peeled apart into sections, into bigger pieces. Our garlic this time we're going to leave whole. Asparagus, Tiny Kitchen Baja seasoning, Tiny Kitchen broccoli chip, and tomatoes just quartered. Our equipment is very simple. One skillet with a tight-fitting lid. Are you ready to get started? We have a little bit of prep to do before we get started. The first is when you're cooking with whole cloves of garlic, you want to make sure that you release that wonderful garlic deliciousness into your dish, but we still want to have the whole clove for the visual appeal when we're done. The way we do that is we simply make a half moon smiley face in each clove of garlic, slightly pry it open, and then when we put it into the liquid, it will draw out that wonderful flavor without destroying the visual appeal of that whole clove of garlic. There's a small amount of prep we want to do on our chicken as well. What we're going to do is put our chicken into a Ziploc bag, and we're going to do a version of a shake and bake to make sure that we get our seasoning on every single solitary spot of that chicken. Be liberal with your Baja seasoning in this case because you want it to get all over everything. And the Tiny Kitchen Baja is perfect for this. It has such a fresh, delicious south of the border flavor. Just shake your chicken all around until the spice is literally on every single surface in that bag. When that's done, we'll set our prep aside until we're ready for it. The first thing we want to do is saute our onion and garlic and start to get those flavors released. So we'll put our garlic into the pan, our onion into the pan, and especially when we're cooking without oil like this, you want to keep your food moving pretty well. Don't let it sit in the pan where it can stick. And we're not going to let this go a long time, just until we start to smell the flavor and the scent release from the onion and garlic. Once we start to smell that savory scent, we're going to add about 1/8 of a cup of white balsamic vinegar. We don't want a lot. And whenever we do this into a hot pan, cold liquid hot pan, always make sure that you stand back a little bit just in case it spatters, you don't get it into your face. We're going to let this heat up together. And now what's going to happen is that wonderful flavor of the garlic and the onion is going to get infused into this vinegar. But with the balsamic vinegar, especially the white balsamic vinegar, the flavor is much more mild and not overpowering. Once you see the vinegar start boiling up like this, we want to just let that sit while we put in our tomatoes and place them evenly around the dish. Don't pour them in a pile. And leave some space in between them. And then we're going to bring in our chicken. Marinated with the Baja seasoning before it goes into this dish. This is good stuff. Now in Spanish, asado means roast. And oftentimes that conjures images of the oven. But that's not the traditional way to make asado, especially with chicken or pollo. It's made stovetop over a light simmer. So once we have our chicken in, we're we're going to add just enough of the balsamic vinegar to come up to the top of the onion and garlic, but not to cover our chicken. Just about like so. We're going to let that come to a good boil, and then we're going to put the lid on the skillet and turn it down to a simmer and let it slow cook or roast to completion. Okay, we see that getting a good roll to it. Just a little bit on this side needs to start coming to a boil. Okay, that's where we'll first put the lid on. And you see the lid start to steam up. Let the pan completely steam up inside. I don't know if you can see on the camera how it's swirling around, but you want it to fill up before you turn the heat down to a low simmer. When you get to the low simmer, it's going to stop boiling, but it's going to stay just below that boiling point while it cooks our chicken. And we'll see you back in 40 minutes. Let's talk today about cross-contamination in the kitchen. Now, you don't need to be overly afraid of cross-contamination. The incidence of foodborne illness in American kitchens is actually very small. Most foodborne illness comes from factories. But when there is foodborne illness, it generally results from cross-contamination. What is cross-contamination? Well, simply put, it's getting the juices from meats mixed up with vegetables and fruits. Why is this a problem? Well, raw meats are going to be cooked before we eat them, but very often vegetables and fruits get cooked much less, if at all. So if we have raw meat juice in our fruits and vegetables, foodborne illness becomes very likely. But the way to prevent this is very, very simple, and it all starts on your cutting board. Statistically or medically, wood cutting boards carry a lot less foodborne illness than plastic does. So get yourself a nice, heavy wooden cutting board, and then always, always, always cut your vegetables first and prep them for your dish, and then come back and cut your meats or prepare your meats on the cutting board afterwards. And then wash your cutting board with soap and as hot a water as you can stand to sterilize it before your next use. Another method is a little easier, and that's to simply have a secondary cutting board. Now, you don't see the prep on Tiny Kitchen episodes very often, but I very often do my vegetable prep on a smaller board sitting on top of this board so that my vegetables aren't getting into the cutting board that I do most of the meat cutting on. Tiny tips, folks. Big results. When you're prepping asparagus, take a look at the stem, because there's a point at which the stem is delicious and a point at which it becomes so fibrous-y that you really won't enjoy eating it. And it's where the color changes. The stem starts out with white, goes through a purple phase, and then starts into a light green, and as it goes up the stem to a darker green. Just before the darker green is where you want to cut the stalks off, and don't even worry about eating the bottom part of the stalk. Now, the first section is still going to be a little bit harder and harder to cook, slower to cook than the rest. So take that portion of the stem and cut it into pieces about 1/2 inch long until you get up to the part of the asparagus where you just begin to get into the pieces sticking out the sides. And that's where we're going to stop cutting. So we're going to take these softer pieces, put into the bottom of our bowl, and we're going to sprinkle these liberally with broccoli chip seasoning. The seasoning is so delicious on any green vegetable. And then we're going to put the smaller pieces on top. And again, we'll go over the top with the broccoli chip seasoning. Prepped like this, the asparagus is going to cook up delicious, soft, easy to chew, very, very tasty. 2.5 minutes in the microwave is all we need. You want to put the asparagus in the microwave between 2 and 2.5 minutes, depending on how crunchy you like it. We're going to go for 2.5 minutes here. All right, we've been 40 minutes now simmering. we've turned the heat off. And as always, I wish we had smell-o-vision because this smells so good. You can see the chicken is all done. It's tender now. The tomatoes are all starting to break down. This is a delicious dish. Let's go ahead and serve up some and see what it looks like. Oh wow, doesn't that look delicious? Wow, I can't wait to taste this one. In some countries, I'm a prized fighter. In some countries, they chew on my feet. South of the Lone Star, they call me loco. What am I? I'm chicken. And I really hope you loved today's dish, Pollo Asado de Baja. Fantastically delicious. You can find the full recipe only at fatfreewithme.com. And for Tiny Kitchen spices, look to shop.fatfreewithme.com. Until next week, folks, take care. Thank you so much for watching, folks. If you've enjoyed your time with us, please take a moment to subscribe to this Tiny Kitchen YouTube channel. While you're at it, check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/FFWMTinyKitchen. And heck, while you're there, post us your photos when you cook this dish. If you're interested in the Fat Free With Me weight loss program, please visit fatfreewithme.com for more information. And to find out more about Tiny Kitchen spice blends, please email us at customercare@fatfreewithme.com for information. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next week.